Hi everyone, it's Krista here, creator of the Bold Beautiful Birth program, and I want to talk to you today about something pretty serious. It's to do with vaginal exams and consent, and I actually feel really disappointed that I even need to speak about this. But I recently, saw another comment, yet another one, in a Facebook group of a woman describing a previous birth experience where she had had a vaginal exam and at some point was saying, no, stop, and they didn't stop. And I just want to say categorically that that is assault and it's not okay, and it really, really needs to stop. Now, the burden of that, the people who should be stopping are the practitioners, okay? They should be taking responsibility and understanding consent, particularly, given that in this context, they are the perpetrator, okay? And I don't want to sound at all like I'm victim blaming here, but I want to empower women with information so that they can feel more prepared to ensure that this doesn't happen to them. But I want to reiterate that it is the responsibility of the practitioner to gain appropriate consent and to communicate clearly. So it is meant to be their job to do this. I also don't want to come across anti-practitioner, and I feel a little bit nervous about that because this is such a serious thing to occur, and I'm certainly not suggesting this happens with every practitioner, okay? There are wonderful doctors and midwives out there who are very gentle, who are very clear in their communication, and who always gain consent before touching a woman. But there's just too many stories of women being assaulted during birth, and these people are getting away with it. And that's what really frustrates me. This is a really emotionally charged topic, and so I'm gonna try to be as delicate as I can and not get fired up, essentially, because I just want to convey some really important information. I want to talk about two things. One, how to prevent or how to avoid a situation where you feel that you're not being listened to with respect to whether or not you consent to a vaginal exam. And I also want to actually talk about what to do if it does occur, and how to sort of get control of that situation and get away. So yeah, I'm really hoping this is helpful, and I'm hoping this doesn't offend anyone, and I'm hoping this is I'm trying to tread a fine line here, but I just feel this is really, really important, so I'm gonna tackle this head on. All right, so I do have some notes that I'm going to refer to make sure I stay on track. But first of all, let's talk about consent. Now, the first thing in avoiding a situation where, like I described, is to understand what consent is and what your rights are. And so, first of all, I just want to mention this concept of implied consent. So, firstly, implied consent is when, through your body language or the context of the situation, it's implied that you consent to a particular procedure. So an example is if a practitioner says, okay, I want you to hop up on the bed here, and we're going to do a vaginal exam, and we're going to do this or that or whatever. Now, if you follow those instructions and hop up on the bed and open your legs or take your pants off, or follow whatever instructions they've provided, then it's implied that you're consenting to that procedure. So that's the first thing. Body language actually is really important. Okay. Now, the second thing I want you to know about consent is that you cannot be compelled to consent, because then it's no longer consent if you're being compelled to do something. So it's really important to know that it is always your choice, always, okay? Nobody is allowed to touch your body unless you give permission for them to do so. And we're talking about a very intimate part of the body here with vaginal exams. So this is really, really important for for everyone to know boundaries, okay? And for you to know that you don't need to allow someone to touch you if you don't feel comfortable. Also, and the third thing I want to mention about consent is that you can withdraw consent at any time. So if you have consented to a vaginal exam, if at any point during the procedure you are uncomfortable with it and want it to stop, then you have the right to withdraw your consent, and they must respect that, okay? So that's consent. I could go on and on and on. There's so much more to consent than that, but I hope that kind of just lays the foundation there. Now, the second thing that you can do to avoid a situation where assault could occur is to always have a support person with you, whether that's your birth partner or another, family or friend or doula or, whoever it is, a support person with you. And essentially they act as a witness to the exchange that occurs. So given the sensitivity of the situation when someone's doing a vaginal exam, then I think it's just really important to have another person in the room that you know and trust, who can act as a witness and possibly even an advocate by amplifying your voice. If you were to say no at any point, they can amplify that and help to communicate that. All right. And the third thing about avoiding the situation is to be really clear about what you're consenting to. I have heard of stories like this, and I have witnessed this firsthand with a client where they were given a vaginal exam, and then whilst they were having the vaginal exam, which they consented to, the practitioner said, okay, we're now just going to do a stretch and sweep while we're here. And in the case with my client, we were able to kind of open the lines of communication there, and I said, are you aware of what she'd like you to do, what she'd like to do? And then the client and practitioner were able to have a conversation about whether or not she consented to a stretch and sweep. However, the problem is that, one, the practitioner was going to do it without consent. She was just going to do it and sort of just mentioned it in passing and didn't kind of stop to gain that consent. And the second thing is that they were having this conversation with the practitioner's hand inside the woman's body. And that's not really okay, in my opinion. I think consent should be given well before the act itself. So it's very common for this to happen, where a practitioner might want to do a stretch and sweep whilst doing a vaginal exam. So make it very clear whether you're consenting to a stretch and sweep or whether you're just consenting to a vaginal exam, and just make sure that's very clear. All right, so that's basically my 3 big tips for avoiding the situation and ensuring that you're kind of in that position of power, like being empowered to understand what you can do to avoid it. The second thing I want to talk about is if it does occur, and the more common scenario of assault occurring is if someone is withdrawing consent whilst a vaginal exam is occurring. And so I want to actually talk about what happens in a vaginal exam and talk about why it's such a vulnerable kind of position for pregnant women. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate I'm going to pretend I'm pregnant for a moment, because that actually is a big reason, like a big part of the vulnerability that happens during a vaginal exam. So I want you to imagine, particularly if there's anyone watching who isn't pregnant, so maybe a birth partner or friend or whoever, that when you're pregnant, there's a lot going on physically, okay? And in particular, like say you're in labor, so that means you're at the end of your pregnancy, you've got a big belly. I know this looks very exaggerated, but just to give the idea, okay? We can't actually see what's going on around the corner there. And so that introduces an element of vulnerability when you're having a vaginal exam, because you can't see what's going on. Without the belly there, you can see, okay? And secondly, we're vulnerable when we're pregnant because there's a lot of physical things going on. There's fatigue, there's aches and pains, and there's hormones, and all of that contributes to women feeling very vulnerable. And particularly when you're in labor, I really want to stress this, that the hormonal physiology of labor is such that women need to be in, I guess, a submissive state, in the sense that hormonally we don't want big rushes of adrenaline, and adrenaline is what we need when we're fighting something. So we don't want to be in a state of fighting or defending ourselves, or even, standing up for our rights. And so it's really kind of contradictory to expect women to kind of fight for their rights in labor, when labor is meant to be somewhere where we're kind of surrendering to our body and allowing the natural process to take over. Anyway, so that's just one layer of vulnerability. There's so many others, but I want to demonstrate what is involved in a vaginal exam. Now, what happens is you need to lay down flat, or relatively flat. Usually there might be a pillow under you, or maybe the bed is inclined just a little, but pretty much flat, okay? And so as you lay down, they'll ask you to put your feet together and then to let your knees flop to the side and really relax and flop to the side. And as you can see here, I cannot see what's going on down there, okay? And the practitioner will sit at your feet and then say, okay, I'm going to touch now, and then they'll do the exam. Now, if everything's good, then this all happens without any incident, and there's trust between the practitioner and the woman, and there's no problems at all. But if for some reason the woman withdraws consent, it can be quite a very vulnerable position, because it requires the practitioner to listen and to react very efficiently, okay? So if you need to withdraw consent, I would encourage you to be very clear in your language. So saying ow, 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 or oh, I'm not sure about this, or are you almost done, or something very indirect is not going to tell a practitioner that you want them to stop. Even the word no, I would suggest, is a little bit ambiguous, and I can't believe I'm saying that. What I'm suggesting that you say is something that is directive, an action word, like stop, okay? So if you are withdrawing consent, you say stop. And if you need to, say it again, stop now. If you need to, again, raise your voice a little so that there's a tone that's communicating urgency. On top of that, you could use some body language in addition. You could actually use your hand to do the stop sign. This is a universal kind of sign that is saying stop. And so that adds additional meaning and helps the practitioner to kind of clue in, you need to pay attention, okay? In addition to that, you've got your support person there, and they are able to reiterate what you have said and to mirror exactly those same strategies, using the word stop, using the word now, using body language to indicate stop, okay? What I've heard can happen sometimes, and this is rarer for it to happen, but it does happen, and this is why we're having this conversation, is that sometimes the practitioner might either, whether their intentions are good or bad, I don't want to judge here, but they may not remove their hand right away, okay? And this is when it's not okay, all right? So I want to give you one more strategy on how to deal with that. And that is, first of all, something not to do. It's very hard to get away from someone with their hand inside you when you're heavily pregnant. So wriggling, moving away, even doing this is not going to get their hand out, because their arm will just, they'll just move with you, okay? So what you need to do, in my view, is to raise your leg and to push their elbow away, okay? So this is something I think you can do even when you're pregnant. Raise your leg and push their elbow away. I'm not suggesting you assault them or kick them or anything like that, but we are moving their hand away. You have a right to get someone to stop touching you if that's what you have clearly communicated to them, okay? And then your partner or support person can help you up and then to move away and up into a position of more safety, okay? So I hope that makes sense. I really hope this helps people, because I am really upset that I keep hearing stories like this. Really, really upset. And every time I hear a story like that, I'm like thinking they should be reported. Honestly, this is assault. To me, that means they should be arrested. It's not okay. Someone, just because they are a doctor or midwife, does not give them the right to touch your vagina if you don't give them permission to. So this is really, really important. And there are so many wonderful practitioners out there who I know always gain consent. They build trust and rapport with the woman. And so there's never this awkward situation where consent has been withdrawn and the practitioner is not listening. Because they either don't do the vaginal exam in the first place because they know to properly gain consent in the first place, or B, they understand immediately that the woman has withdrawn her consent and they remove their hand immediately. So they're the wonderful practitioners out there, and I do still believe in my heart that they are the majority, but it's still happening too often. And I want women to know that they have rights and that they can say stop at any point, and they can take action if someone assaults them during their pregnancy or during the birth itself. Final tip is partners or support people, have your phone ready, and if need be, start recording, and then you have evidence of what's occurred. And please, please, if assault occurs, please report it to the hospital and even the authorities. Okay, stand your ground. You have rights, and we need to have people respect the law and respect your bodily autonomy and rights to your body. And so I really encourage you to perhaps even role play this with your partner, just to kind of go through the motions and to physically feel what you can do to stop that occurring. And I really encourage even birth partners to pretend you're the pregnant person and to experience that vulnerability and what it's like. And I demonstrated that with jeans on. Can you imagine it, with no pants on? Can you imagine how vulnerable you would feel with someone, doing an exam, which, if in the case where you haven't consented, it's not okay. And I want everyone to know how to deal with this and how we can really force change, because it's already in our laws. It's already in our ethical guidelines. This is very clear what's right and what's wrong, but it's still occurring. And so we need to do more to make this change. This is the time of the Me Too movement. I just can't believe this is still happening in hospitals. So I hope that is a little bit helpful, and I wish you all the best in your birthing journey. Bye for now.